At the center of Canada's largest city lies a bustling square, not unlike what you'd find in many other metropolises, such as Times Square, Hyde Park, or the Boston Common. But has the corner of Yonge and Dundas lived up to its promise? Joining us now to debate that, Kristen Wong-Tam, councillor for Ward 27, that's Toronto Centre Rosedale. John Sewell, the former mayor for the Old City of Toronto. Edward Keenan, senior editor at The Grid. And Desmond Cole, contributing writer to Torontoist. And it's good to have you all here in the studio with us today. I want to, actually, take a step back first. We get asked all the time, where do you get your story ideas from? And this time, it happened because our producer, Mary Tawes, who's producing this program, took a walk down Yonge Street one day, looked at Yonge-Dundas Square, and just said, there's a story here. So that's why we're doing it. Here are some photos.
It's always dangerous to get out on the street.
You know, no, but it worked out
Good
great.
ideas out there.
This is for all of us who've lived in this city for a long time, and for those who haven't and wonder what this city used to look like. Look at the monitors here in the studio, because this is how Yonge-Dundas used to look in times gone by. This is looking west in the year 1926. It's a pretty different looking place back then. Then we got to the 1950s, where we're starting to see some sense of automotive traffic. And there's a little more, the Biltmore. A lot of people who've been here for some time will remember the Biltmore there on the left of that shot. And there's Burton's, which is 1974 we're talking now. And keep going forward. Cole's, the book people. You remember when Cole's was the biggest bookseller in the country? That's in the mid-1970s. There's Dundas Square, classic bookshop, 1979. John Sewell's mayor at this point. The Hard Rock Cafe, Yonge and Dundas in 79. Now we're getting very futuristic here. There's 2008, what the Hard Rock looks like now. And, oh my goodness, I mean, if that's not evocative of Times Square, that's Yonge-Dundas Square today with the massive advertising campaigns they have there and so on. All right, we've seen how the square has changed over almost a century, and I just want to start very open-endedly. John, get us started here. What about those changes strikes you the most? What's most dramatic that jumps out at you as you think about it?
I guess the fact you've got these great big billboards there, that hits you. But I think that the better thing is that this has really turned into the center of someplace. It's somewhere you want to be. I mean, all those photos you showed, there weren't many people in them, which I guess nobody wanted to be there. Right. But I think Dundas Square is a place people want to be today.
Kristen, how about you?
I think it's about the open space, simply because before we had a linear street that had some very narrow sort of storefronts, and now you have about 1 acre of public open space, and that's, to me, very striking. And of course, there's the overwhelming sense of commerciality because of the billboards, too.
Overwhelming sense. That doesn't necessarily sound like you think it's a good thing.
You know, it's been very controversial. I think that there is a sense that, you know, public spaces should be accessible to all. This is still a very heavily commercialized street. It's not Yonge-Dundas Square without the context of the neighborhood. So I think that we have to sort of take a look at how we got there in the conversation. And it was a very controversial move when they started to sort of embrace the concept of bright lights in big city. And that's been the ongoing conversation right now in Yonge Street.
Desmond, what jumps out at you as you've looked at those pictures change over the last 90 years or so?
Well, I didn't grow up in Toronto. I came here in my 20s. But when I was growing up in Oshawa, not too far away, just a train ride away, Yonge-Dundas wasn't a destination. It wasn't a place where you would think of coming into town to go. You'd go to the markets or you'd go to the Jays games. But I think increasingly now it is becoming one of those places for really neat free concerts and the interesting demonstrations that are happening, and that didn't used to be the case. I definitely agree with what's being said about the advertising. You know, if you walk through Yonge-Dundas at night, it feels like there's a lightning storm happening. It's a bit disconcerting, really, that this space kind of never quiets down and is never kind of at peace. And so I think that people feel like there's something wrong with that. People feel like there are a lot of advantages, I think, to the way that the square works and the different uses that it has. But it's a little bit hectic, and it's a little bit I think, a space that even pushes people away with some of its noise.
Pushes people away. We'll follow up on that in a second. Edward, your view.
Well, I mean, I think it's unavoidable that it's a monument to commercialism, right? And I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing. If I was building a public square, I wouldn't necessarily have chosen that. I think very consciously from the time they started planning the current Yonge-Dundas Square, Times Square's advertising light spectacle was the model. very consciously. I remember Kyle Ray talking about building Toronto's Times Square.
He's the former Toronto City Councillor.
The former Toronto City Councillor for the ward, who sort of spearheaded the project. But I think my memories of Yonge-Dundas Square, stretching back into the 80s, were that it was already always one of the most vibrant, active places in the city. The stretch of sidewalk in front of the Eaton Centre that's still there was already a gathering place for manic street preachers and drummers and all kinds of people. When I was a Ryerson student in the early 90s, we would buy lunch and just hang out in front of the Eaton Centre and just watch. And it was already this insane spectacle. And
it was always entertaining, wasn't
yeah, and you know, when the Blue Jays won the World Series in the early 90s, my friends and I, who lived in Scarborough at the time, headed down to Yonge-Dundas because that's where you went. It was already the city's living room. I think it still serves that purpose, and arguably even better today and more vibrantly today, although, you know, we do have a lot of big screen TVs in our living room now.
Well, let me pick up on that and go to John Sewell with this. This organization, the Toronto Public Space Committee, often points to Yonge-Dundas Square as an example of what they consider to be a negative trend in urban planning. You share that view?
No, I don't. No. I happen to think that the signs add a sense of excitement about the place. And I think that's good. I think you do want to be in a place that's exciting. So I don't want to see those signs in very many other places. But in terms of that one place, I don't have a problem at all. I think, and it gives a great sense of enclosure to the space. I mean, when you look at all the spaces we've got in Toronto, so what other space feels like it's got real edges to it so that you really belong? I can't think of one. Maybe Nathan Phillips Square, but it's much more formal. There's a whole bunch of other problems with it. But it's sort of a unique space for Toronto. So those signs, I think, are fine. They go there well. That's okay with me.
Kristen, you like the kind of, as John puts it, the enclosed nature of it. It is a kind of a defined space, unlike Nathan Phillips Square at City Hall.
Yeah, I think one of the things to keep in mind is that the Yonge-Dundas Square sits on that 1 acre of land, but then the enclosure, the effect of the enclosure of the signs and the billboard proliferation is happening outside of the square. So all of that, the intersection is outside the square. The square functions well because it's an open space. It's openly accessible to the public. In some ways, there's a very business-oriented model of management, and I think that's what makes it successful. Not necessarily, I would disagree with you, John, but not necessarily just billboards, because I think that there are other models of civic square, of public spaces that are very successful, that are very people-oriented. Union Square is one of them in San Francisco, where you have a fairly large expanse piece of land, and it's more people-oriented. I'm not going to change, the role of Yonge-Dundas Square in the context of the neighborhood. Certainly, I think that's a larger conversation for the business community as well as the growing residential community that's now coming into the neighborhood. But we are hearing that people are wanting some passive spaces. And Yonge-Dundas Square is successful not just because the volume of people there. It has to be marked on quality of experience. So it's not just good enough to have lots of people, but how are they interacting with the space?
Do you hang out there?
I mean, do I hang out there?
Yeah.
It's not my kind of music, but I think we need that space and it works well. I don't want a passive space there. I want something really active. I agree. Right there at that dead section of Yonge Street beside the Eaton Centre, to have something really hopping, that is terrific. And I don't think you can have a square that's all things to all people. We are not talking about St. Mark's Square in Venice when we're talking about Dundas Square. They're different places.
Different, just expand on that. Culturally, Yonge-Dundas is a different place from San Marcos Square because why?
It's a big performance space for big rock bands coming in there, or demonstrations, and that whole thing about the signs being across the street, it's true. The lovely thing about Dundas Square is it spills out onto those streets. It sort of owns those streets. And, you know, my son was telling me that he went there to see Iggy Pop. He said, "Dad, 20,000 people." Well, isn't that terrific? You can actually have a great big concert like that right out in the... So, I mean, I like that, and I don't want it to be a different kind of space. We need other kinds of spaces in Toronto. I mean, it's sad that we've basically got two, and only two, that really function as that. And Nathan Phillips Square. I mean, that's it. You go up to somewhere like Mel Lastman Park in front of, up there in North York, and I mean, it's just, there's no sense of a place. Mm-hmm. And that, anyway, so we need some more spaces. I agree on that. I won't quarrel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot to be said for the fact that in general we don't have a lot of, for example, green space downtown. We lament the lack of that. And so I think folks like the Toronto Public Space Committee have that in mind when they're critiquing Yonge-Dundas as a
There's
space.
no green there at all, is there?
Not really. There's a few planters. They have
baskets.
and I think the water play that they have with the fountains is a really neat, kind of unique thing as well. So it's not to only point out criticism. In fact, I really think that there's a sense of excitement when you enter Yonge-Dundas from the so many different ways that you can. And of course, there's a new subway entrance that you can use at Yonge-Dundas now because of the redevelopment there. It feels exciting to be there. It's not going to be all things to all people, I agree. And as much as I might criticize it for some things, I have fond memories, for example, of, I remember Michael Jackson passed away, and in about a day and a half, a really spontaneous but well-organized gathering, a memorial was put together at Yonge-Dundas. And you know, people who didn't even know what was going on were being pulled in from all which ways in the street. And it was a beautiful thing to witness.
Edward, does it concern you there's no green space there at all? Now, I know Queen's Park's a 10-minute walk away, but does it bother you there's no green there?
No, not at all. I mean, I don't think it's that kind of space. And we've all said it in various different ways, I think. But I think a public space like Yonge-Dundas Square is so active and so vibrant and such a asset to the city, specifically because of the kind of space it is. People are on their way to someplace else. There's a movie theaters there, there's shopping there, and because that mass of people who are going to the subway, going to Ryerson, going to the movies, whatever, are passing through that square and using it every day, it becomes a place then where you want to hold a demonstration. It becomes a place where you break dance with your hat out so people will give you money. And then it becomes the kind of place where I take my kids so we can see the break dancers and the screamers and all of that, right? But I can't see, I mean, I live near High Park, right? So
West
we
End of
have
Toronto.
big green spaces. Yeah, I grew up near Riverdale Park in the East End, which is a green space. Queen's Park is there. I'm certainly not opposed to green spaces in the city, but I think the intersection of Yonge and Dundas serves a purpose that's fundamentally sort
Well,
of.
John, follow up on that if you would. How does what goes on at Yonge-Dundas Square contribute to Toronto's sense of its own civic identity?
Oh, well, if you can have a place where people can celebrate certain things, that's really terrific. And this idea of celebrating, not celebrating, but mourning Michael Jackson's death
Celebrating. It was a
at the
celebration.
square. Well, it was a kind of thing. But I mean, it's interesting when it came to Jack Layton dying, there wasn't any question about where that would happen. That's at Nathan Phillips Square. So it really does offer the opportunity of doing certain things in that space, and people associate it with it. Really active, vibrant, loud stuff that you can feel, mostly younger, I think, not older. That's one of my problems about, how often do I visit it? Well, I walk through it and all that sort of stuff, but I don't go there for events.
It's a place for young people, isn't it? It
More or
feels
less,
like
and
it.
isn't that terrific? Right there in the center, isn't that terrific?
But does it feel unfriendly to somebody who's over the age of 50?
No, I don't think
You
so.
don't think so?
No,
Okay.
no. And I just loved it. I mean, I was there a few days ago, and it was a sunny day, and somebody had moved one of the chairs from the tables that are there and sat right in the sun in the middle of the smoking a cigarette. Oh, just feeling so good. And I thought, isn't this nice? I mean, this space is so nice that the way it's designed so it ramps up just a bit. So it's not a flat space. It's
Former
higher
mayor.
at the east end than at the west, so that in fact, you get a sense of perspective. And I mean, economically, they've been so smart about it, putting the parking underneath that helps to pay for the costs of running the thing. I think it's really well designed. Brown and Story, I think, are
Yes, that's
the
right.
architects,
Yeah, the
right?
architects.
The guys who did St. George Street, the design in St. And I think it works pretty well.
You mentioned Jack Layton, and I wanted to go to you on that because I remember just after he died, there was a lot of traffic on Twitter about potentially naming this place after him.
Yes.
Did that go anywhere?
No, the Board of Management did obviously give it some conversation. Ultimately, it would be a decision made by Council. I have now been on the Board of Management of Yonge-Dundas Square as well as Downtown Yonge BIA since I took office in 2010. And I would say that every single time there's a passing of a Torontonian of some prominence, there is a request to rename the square. And this has now been 3 times since I've been there. So no, I think that if the City of Toronto wants to rename the square, that will have to come from the city initiative and not the Board of Management.
And why? Why wouldn't it have worked to name it after Jack Layton?
It was just Twitter conversation. There was never really a formal proposal or proposition brought forward. But I would say that the square is, based on the design of James Brown and Kim Story, it actually allows for this openness. And for whatever it's worth, I think that Yonge and Dundas has now become a very iconic intersection in the city. You've got one of the busiest subway platforms unloading there.
You don't feel an obligation to name it after somebody?
Not necessarily.
No,
I mean,
okay.
it will be a council decision if that does change.
Is that, I guess, following on the model of Mr. Times and Mrs. Piccadilly, who had these iconic public squares named after them?
Well, the Times Square is actually named
It's
after a thing.
Yes, it is.
In New York Times.
And that's, I guess we could call it Eaton Center Square, but Timothy Eaton Square, that would be. But no, I think Yonge and Dundas already has a name, but beyond that, I think in the case of Jack Layton, it would have been the wrong fit anyway, because Jack Layton's political life and career, there's no questioning that it was really important to the city, and there's no questioning that Yonge and Dundas Square is really important to the city, but they don't overlap all that
Well,
much
it's too
to me.
corporate now anyway,
Yeah.
John, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. You got to watch naming things. I mean,
What, Nathan Phillips did okay?
yeah. But sometimes they don't work out that well. I mean, there's been some jails named after some very nice people that don't get good publicity, and
I hear you. Okay.
So you'd say no to John Sewell Square then?
I want to tell you, people have tried to name stuff after me, and I've said no, thank you very much. No, just don't do it.
Because
you run into too many problems. And just no. That's fine.
Gotcha. Okay. Desmond, try this. To what extent is the square, do you think, a reflection of Torontonian culture?
I think it is in some ways, because I think you get the big ticket stuff. You get really amazing free concerts that draw thousands and thousands of people. You also get people who nobody knows coming out into the middle of the square with a placard, with a message, proselytizing, preaching, and they have a really big audience. And there's some people, I think everybody knows the Jesus guy at Yonge-Dundas Square who stands there.
Sarko.
And it was in the blog post, actually, that Sarko is kind of one of these local celebrities. And that's created by the fact that he's diligent and is really faithful to this one spot that he has preaching at Yonge-Dundas Square. And people see him there, and he's kind of a staple. And so the fact that the square can elevate people like that, who nobody knows and who have a very simple but, apparently consistent message, I think that's something. I think it does say something about, there's a little bit of a leveling going on there.
You find him annoying?
He scares me sometimes because I don't see him coming. You should think I'd know after 7 or 8 years, right?
Fear in the depths of hell. Come on,
But
Desmond, that's what he's doing.
He's dramatic. He is, yeah.
I totally believe in what he's doing, though. And whether it's to preach or to express outrage, I think we do need those public spaces. And I think it's good that people choose a place where they know that people are going to hear them.
Edward.
I just, following up on the idea of it being a place where you see Toronto's culture, it's interesting because so much of Toronto's identity is expressed through diversity, right? And so you see different parts of Toronto when you go to different neighborhoods. If you go to Chinatown, you see a certain type of culture expressed. If you go to parts of Scarborough, it's a different type of culture expressed, et cetera, the beaches, But sort of Yonge and Dundas Square, although it is literally some people's home, or nearby is their home, it's sort of this crossroads where all these different elements of our culture come together. And so I think it's interesting for that. You don't get an expression of one sort of identity, but you see a lot of different people doing a lot of different things.
Kristen, as the square has evolved, has the kind of protesting that takes place there evolved as well?
I think so. I mean, Yonge Street has always been that political rallying street. Whether it's the Rodney King riots that took place in Los Angeles, we had a protest here in Toronto. It's a place of celebration. It's a place of people coming together, and I think that speaks very well. Not to mention the fact that we've got the busiest subway station system in all of Canada running through there. But I would say that Yonge-Dundas Square is just one piece of the conversation. It's a much larger dialogue about connecting the spine of Yonge Street. And Yonge Street is changing, and I would think that it's very important to note that we've got 60 condominium development applications coming down the pipeline that all touch along the spine of Yonge Street, which is why I say it's really important to not just look at Yonge-Dundas Square without looking at the neighborhood context. And I think that for all those uses and all the people that are coming into the neighborhood, there is the square itself, but then there's also the sidewalks that are abutting the square that are on the opposite end of the street, such as in front of the Eaton Center. I think what everyone is speaking to about where the protesters are and where the proselytizers are, they're actually not necessarily directly in front of the square or on the square. They're across the street. And so it's an intersection conversation, it's animation around the edges.
Did you see John Sewell's reaction when you mentioned there were 60 condo projects going down Yonge Street?
I did.
I think
I caught him at the corner of my eye.
I'm pretty sure he grimaced.
Well, condos aren't the only thing in the world we should be building. I mean, that's the problem. These towers.
Seems to be what the market wants, though.
Oh, no, it's what the development industry is willing to offer. I mean, I think if City Council said, we aren't going to allow any more buildings over 10 or 12 stories, sorry.
You tried that 40 years ago.
Yeah, and it worked too. We did really well in the 45-foot holding bylaw and pulling everything down. It really worked well. And at the moment, we've lost our grip on that. We're just getting these massive things. And the point, and I have no question that making Yonge Street a more lively street by building more housing along it is absolutely terrific. This is a good
Even
idea.
a Yonge-Dundas Square? Would you like to see some tall condos there? They could handle it.
They could probably handle one on the south side. That's about it. But I think we've got enough tall condos in Toronto. I mean, we're going to pay for this. You know, we built St. Jamestown in the mid '60s because it was going to be the way of the future. It has not.
This is my
worked
bad
out
here.
well.
I took us right off course, but I'm going to try and put us back on course here.
You mean I don't get to speak to that?
You cannot speak about whether Toronto ought to build more condos. You can speak, if you want, about whether we need a big condo right at Yonge and Dundas as sort of a feeder system for people to the square.
I believe one was just approved last month, Councillor. And
How many stories?
60.
60.
Yes, mid-block connection in the historic theater block, so it's just south of Shooter and Yonge. But
This is the one behind Massey Hall.
Yeah, but I think it's really important to note, like the reason I mentioned the condominium applications coming in is to just say that the commerciality of the street is also changing. So the demographic and the programming of the street is going to change because you have a lot more people living there, which means that we're going to need better pedestrian connections. We're going to have to animate the laneways. We're going to have to look at opportunities to unlock sort of the hidden green spaces, and that's why I say, you know, there are times where people need the passive space, and Yonge-Dundas Square actually has the flexibility to accommodate both.
So if we aren't going to have a lot more condos there, how about a casino? No, sorry.
Right there.
No.
I know you're kidding now.
I'm pulling that one back.
I know you're kidding. What about, I need somebody with some significant institutional memory here, so that's you, John Sewell. When you were mayor of Toronto, the nature and type of protests that took place always back then at Nathan Phillips Square,
right,
compared to what takes place today at Yonge-Dundas Square, any difference?
No, I don't think so.
So they just moved, eh?
I think a lot of the demonstrations have moved. That's correct. And they're more about international subjects now than I think they used to be. There's that sense of globalization about demonstrations and or national and oil sands stuff. And there's been some problems with City Hall and its focus as a place where you want to demonstrate. I mean, a lot of construction going on, and they rent out the square often and so forth.
But if you want to fight City Hall, I mean, don't you want to do it in front of City Hall?
Well,
but in fact,
we haven't been seeing a lot of those kinds of demonstrations recently. Let's fight City Hall.
What's going on?
That's what I think that's it, is that if you have a demonstration where you want to take it to City Hall, or it's something about municipal politics, then Nathan Phillips Square is a very natural place. And again, if you want to protest Queen's Park, there's a lawn at Queen's Park. That's a great place for a protest. But if the protest is bigger than City Hall or different, Yonge-Dundas Square is a civic square without being a political square. It's not. You don't go there to take your fight to the mayor. You go there to take your message to the city.
Mind you, when Stephen Harper prorogued, I think for was it the second or third time? Second time. Massive demonstration at Yonge-Dundas Square.
Yeah, Steve, if I could pick up on that,
Sure.
actually. I I've been reporting on demonstrations that have been going on inside municipal buildings, such as protesters demonstrating about homelessness inside Metro Hall, in front of the mayor's office on the second floor of City Hall. And I think that there is a place for that. There's always going to be a place for that. I remember distinctly after the G20, the protest in front of 40 College Street, which is not too far away, still in the heart of downtown. People are going to take the protest, I think, to the place where they feel like it has significance, where they're sending the appropriate message. That's not always Nathan Phillips Square, and so I think that that's why it's not always happening there. And as far as Yonge-Dundas is concerned, I think the same thing. I mean, Tamil protesters took over University Avenue and even actually
took over the Gardner
and I was
Expressway.
just going to say, actually went down. So do you think that they would have had the same traction and gotten the same response if they had gone to Yonge-Dundas? I don't think so, and I think that
No, but that's not something you'd want to try twice, I don't think.
maybe not. And they were highly criticized by some for their tactics. And I understand that, but what I'm trying to say is that when you want to show that you're upset, you don't go to the so-called designated protest area. You go into the streets and you make a fuss.
I hear you, but I wonder whether you guys are getting off, being let off the hook a little bit, you city councilors, because I'll tell you something, there's nothing that focuses the mind more than being in your office at City Hall and hearing 5,000 people in Nathan Phillips Square screaming at you because they think you're on the wrong track.
Yeah.
Now, if it's 2 blocks away, Yonge-Dundas Square, you're not going to hear that anymore. You think
right.
that's a problem?
You know, I think that protest takes place on the street, and I would say that the Toronto Police Service would probably agree with me, is that, you know, when you don't need a permit to demonstrate, you don't need a permit to make a political statement, and that's what the streets are largely, I think, how they should function. So Yonge-Dundas Square, just so everyone knows, actually has programming throughout the year. It's rented out.
Yeah, the city owns it.
Yes, and it's rented out to various agencies and corporations that are, you know, setting up events. So it does interfere, obviously, with the programming of the square, but, you know, it has always been able to sort of find the middle ground. But I would say some of the most effective protests have been actually on the street. If you come out to Nathan Phillips Square, it's a very large square.
Yeah.
Unless you're going to bring thousands of people to fill it, it's not effective.
Right.
But certainly out of the, you know, off the sidewalks and into the streets, that particular slogan, it was designed for mobilization of people on the streets.
You've been to Hyde Park?
I have not been to Hyde Park.
You've been to Hyde Park? Mm-hmm. We're talking the UK now, London, UK.
Yeah,
Does this evoke memories of that for you?
No.
No? Different?
No, where you've got somebody who can speak and you
Yeah, speaker's corner and all that
That's
stuff.
not what this square's about at all.
No?
Not at all. No, if you're going to do, again, yeah, I mean, Nathan Phillips Square isn't the right place to do it because you have to have a Hyde Park corner in a place where there's lots of people willing to listen to you. You know, maybe outside the TVO studios or something like that might be an appropriate place, but Dundas Square is not the place for it. Apart from, you know, the odd religious person who's doing it on an informal kind of basis and a character basis rather than anything else.
I think the latest count is 56 million people a year pass through Yonge-Dundas Square. If you've got a message, that's quite an audience, right?
It sure is. But again, if you've got a message, you're also competing with a lot of other messages. There are the commercial messages there are the resident preachers, and there's everybody else who wants to reach those 56 million people. So it's a broad band, but it's crowded.
So do we like the fact that there is, I always get this word wrong, cacophony? That there's a cacophony. Do we like the fact that there's a cacophony of different protest messages all happening at once much of the time?
Yep.
We do like that.
I love
Sure,
it, yeah.
It's terrific.
It is.
Yeah, it's real active. Things are moving all the time. It's like television, like Twitter and all that stuff. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Pick and choose. Yeah, this is good.
It's
I'm
not
not
too
sure.
many
I think
messages
it
all.
depends on who you ask as well. I mean, representing the area business owners as well as the residents, these folks are trying to get to and fro from where they need to go, whether it's crossing the street for Ryerson University, and there are conflict points. The meters, the sidewalks are generally about 2 meters wide, maybe 3 meters wide. You've got thousands of the people walking through the neighborhood, and the concentration of where the activity, because every single protester, every single busker wants to be around the corner, every single hot dog vendor wants to be at the intersection. So there are conflict points, and if you are carrying heavy grocery bags, if you're a woman pushing a stroller, if you're a person using a mobility device, now you're talking about mobility issues. So I think it depends on who you ask.
Do
that
the local
question to.
businesses mind the kinds of people who show up at this place?
You know what, the business owners are amazing and the property owners are wonderful. They're asking for just, you know, a little bit more space so that you can see their storefronts, to be able to access the doorways. And I don't think that's an unreasonable request. Certainly most businesses across the city don't have to, you know, deal with a crush of people before they get through your local bakery or your coffee shop. This seems to be a constant issue of managing the crowds at Yonge-Dundas.
Yes?
Well, I mean, is it a question of the people getting in the way of you know, kind of the commercial space, or the other way around, or is it a mix of both happening at the same time? I don't know. I mean, I definitely think Yonge-Dundas is a place that says that it's really hard to get people's attention these days. It seems to scream that when you walk through. So there are a lot of competing interests, as Ed said, and all the huge billboards that are over top of, you know, I won't promote the stores by naming them all now, but you probably all know the ones, the big marquee corporate stores that are down there. It's a big attention grab all of the time, and everybody's competing for those eyeballs and for people to come into the stores. I mean, there are times when I walk through Yonge-Dundas that I actually don't really want to stop and talk to somebody who has a flyer for me or wants to tell me about a yoga course. I'm just trying to get where I'm going, like other places in the city, and I think that has to be considered. And certainly when you talk about pedestrian clearway, people who have mobility issues can probably, I think, have a really tough time in some circumstances trying to navigate through them. We have to be conscious of that. But the pedestrian scramble, for that reason, is a really great thing.
Where they stop all the lights in every direction and everybody, okay, right, gotcha.
See,
Edward.
yeah, that's the thing, is that I love the cacophony, or whatever, however you do pronounce that, because as a citizen of the city, as a visitor to the square, as a person passing through it, that's a very different question than whether it's an effective place to get your message out, because you're a part of the scenery, you're a part of the noise. For me, as a resident, there's an urbanity there that comes from the hyperactivity of it. I don't know if that's the most effective place to hand out pamphlets, but I'm glad there are people handing out pamphlets there, even if I don't want to take them, even if I don't want to read them. I like that they're there reminding me that there are a lot of different concerns in the city and a lot of different people trying to get their message across.
Okay, well, we're going to continue this discussion about protest, but not with you four. So I'm going to thank you four for coming in today. Kristen Wong-Tam, the City Councillor for Ward 27. John Sewell, the spirit of William Lyon Mackenzie still runs through this man's veins. He's the former mayor of Toronto. Edward Keenan, the senior editor of The Grid, and Desmond Cole, the contributing writer for Torontoist. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.